Hello, teacher. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you, Sebastián. I am Flor de
Oh,
Lis.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, students. Hello, Sebastián, Rafael, Liliana, Sara, Flor.
Hello, teacher.
Good evening, teacher.
Good evening, teacher. Well, I think we can start. There are a lot of students in the course, but well, we're going to start now. I already checked your tasks. The first task, I will upload the feedback by the end of the day, so after the second encounter. I'm glad to have you all in this encounter. I already have had classes with all of you actually, and well, I guess you also know each other from other courses. I would like to start by asking you if you have any question about the course, the tasks, or the deadlines, or the information that has been published. No questions?
Well, teacher, up to now, no questions. In my case, I am finishing the readings in order to start the activity. So in this moment, I don't have question about that.
Okay, good.
Teacher, I have a question. You sent me a message telling me that you couldn't see my infographic. So can you make the uploading space again available to me to send it through a picture, not the link, but a picture?
Okay, or could you send the picture to my email, the sales,
Okay.
please?
Okay, I will. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Good. So the purpose of our encounter tonight is to review some of the concepts that you read last week, also to discuss the relationship between language and culture a little bit, and we will focus more on language and identity. We will have an exercise to work on that. So I'm going to start by asking you a question that you will see on the screen. There you have it. So what does it mean to know a language? Whoever wants to answer is okay.
Well, in my opinion, teacher, to know a language is sorry, it is to know a lot about culture, to know a group of people, to interact with these people, and to have meaningful experiences with the culture and the information from the country that where this language is spoken. It involves a lot of things. I think I've known a lot of more things now that I am an English teacher than before, and it is thanks to knowing the language. So my mind has been opened by the language knowledge that I have acquired so far.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian.
Yes.
So as you
Teacher.
mentioned, yes, Flor. Sebastian mentioned the idea of culture and interaction, successful interactions. Good. So, Flor, please give us your opinion about the question or your answer.
Okay, teacher, thank you. Well, I want to say that I agree with Sebastian, because I think that when you know how something about a language, it's not only to know how to say any word, only vocabulary. I think that is not only that, but also is to know how to appropriate or how to use in any moment, maybe the semantics aspect of phonetics or pronunciation. It's something more than only how to know how to speak in another language different to us.
Okay,
Ours.
very good. Right. Who else has a different opinion or answer for the question? Okay, so let's go through some concepts that you already read, which are society, that is the group of people who are drawn together for a certain purpose or purposes. That's what the reading uh, stated, right? Language, the system of linguistic communication particular to a group. And for sociolinguistics, we have that it studies what speakers have in their heads about the rules to speak in different contexts. So it says that it sometimes is a knowledge that every person has, but also is constructed in a society. So through interaction with 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 people that live in the same space, we learn how we need to communicate. It is not something that is taught; it is something that is acquired. So that we, by observing and by analyzing how people around us talk, we learn some rules in society to speak, some rules that our society or our communities or the places or contexts where we are have those rules that those contexts have about how we need to communicate. But there are also rules that are imposed, let's say, by the family or other strong groups. So sociolinguistics study those rules that we have, that knowledge that we have about how we need to communicate with others.
Teacher, excuse me, is something similar like when you go to a special part, maybe to go to another city, it's important that you know how to behave in that. Maybe some expressions or any behaviors are not correct in that place, right?
Exactly. That's what we will find in some books as competence. So the competence of is to know how to communicate in different places or in different contexts. So uh, an example could be that for North Americans, it is not good to say, "Do you understand?" Because they will understand that we think they cannot or they have not the ability um, to understand what we are trying to say. For them, it is better to say,
Did you got
uh,
it, maybe?
well, it also depends on the people you speak to. So,
Ah,
but it is
okay.
better to say, well, do you know what I mean? Or if it's in a formal situation, in informal situation, sorry, if it's in a more formal situation, could be, did I make myself understood? Sorry, did I make myself understood? So is the person who speaks is the one who wants to know if he was or she was able to communicate properly. While if you say, did you understand? You are saying that probably the person who's listening has not the ability to comprehend what you say. So by saying it the other way around is better for them. So they have like some cases like the one that I just mentioned, in which words need to be chosen carefully in order not to be rude. For example, the word fat is a little bit rude for them, so they prefer to say chubby or a little bit overweight. But if you say fat, it's kind of rude. Here it doesn't happen. We can say, well, she's fat, and she's not going to feel that it is a very rude word. But for other cultures, it is. So we need to know the cultures, or we need to know more knowledge about the countries or the societies or the people we are talking to in order to be successful when communicating.
Teacher, according with the situation of the United States with the term understand, in Spanish is the same situation. For example, many people say, ¿me entiendes? It's the same situation. It's better to say, me hago entender.
Okay, but here is not that rude than in other places. If we say, ¿me entiendes? The other person is not going to feel is not going to feel bad, or is not going to feel angry about what we said. It is more polite to say, me hice entender, but here there is not a big deal if we say, ¿me entiendes? While in other places it is.
Okay.
Okay, so then we have also the situation that it depends on the people we talk to. So for some, for instance, in our country, there are words that do not have the same meaning in all the regions in Colombia. For example, the word chuspa, for example. Chuspa is a word that is used in Cali, right? Some people, probably people who have not been to Cali, they won't understand if a person from Cali says, do you have tienes una chuspa? The other person is going to...
What is that?
Yeah, it's going to get confused. So, for instance, in the same country, we have different regions in which there are varieties, and the reason for those varieties is something that social linguistics study. But it is to tell you that also it depends on the people we talk to. So probably a person from Bogota who has relatives in Cali is going to understand that question with any problem. But a person who doesn't have any connection with people from Cali is not going to understand the question easily. Okay, so let's continue. We have here the topic of varieties is something that you are studying and reading more this week, right? You have this week a task in groups, and the chapter that you're reading is about varieties and dialects. So the book tells us that, or mentions that the same person can have different varieties. So here we have some questions that demonstrate that. How do you greet your friends, your family, your colleagues, your professors, and your acquaintances? Are there different verbal exchanges as well as different embodied practices? For example, air kisses, shaking hands, fist bumps. So think about it. And does the situation matter? So do you greet your family differently if you have not seen them for a long time, or friends in different ways depending on whether you run into each other by accident on campus or if you are meeting for dinner? So probably you greet your friend, close friend, in a different way if you are in a social meeting than if you are in the cinema. So the situation matters. Here we have other questions. Are there ways of greeting, either that you use or that you don't use, that index membership in particular groups? That it means that uh, greetings can also be used to mean that we want to belong to a specific group of people. So, for example, teenagers usually create new ways of greeting because they want to feel that they belong to the same group. So, the group of teenagers or a special group of friends. So, some ways of greeting for us are not correct or appropriate, but sometimes they are used when people want to make others understand that they want to belong to a special group of people. So I would like any of you like tell us the different greetings that you use for the people that is mentioned here: friends, family, colleagues, professors, and acquaintances. What words do you use?
In Spanish,
Yes.
well, for friends, I can sometimes you say "¿Qué más puedes?" here
Okay.
in Medellin, right?
Uh-huh.
Like
¿Qué
a
más
vice.
puedes? Or but for family, you just say "Hola, ¿cómo estás?" Yes,
Uh-huh.
it's a little bit different. Language is very different. It's way more confident the one with friends. And for what's the other setting for
Colleagues.
well, my colleagues,
It's the same.
I say hello to them
Hello.
like hello, buddy, how are you? Because it's in English.
Okay. Professors, teachers.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo está?
Okay, more formal, right?
Very
Mm-hmm.
politely, yes.
Okay. What if you are in a meeting, in a social meeting, a formal social encounter with a close friend? How do you greet that friend? Do you shake hands? Do you fist bumps? What do you do? Do you behave the same way?
Well, I do.
You do.
I
Okay.
don't know if I am
Some people do.
so conscious. Yes, because he's my friend. No matter where we are, we're friends, and we say hello the same way, I think.
Okay. Good. Yes, some people do. Some people don't. The word that you use to greet your friends in Medellin, in Antioquia, differs from the words that usually are used in Bogota to greet friends. So we usually say in Bogota, hola, ¿qué tal? Or ¿qué hubo, qué más? But in Antioquia they use ¿qué más pues? Or what is the other? But they don't use that much hola. Or once I met a person from there and he told me it was very weird, my greeting.
There's even a word called kiwo. You say kiwo,
Exactly.
and there's a newspaper here called kiwo. It's a
Okay.
very local newspaper.
Yeah, so that's part of varieties, regional varieties, but The examples that you gave us about the different greetings, according to the different listeners, are examples of varieties for the same person, that is you, right?
Oh,
According to different people and different contexts.
yeah, I wanted to say that all those would sound weird, like in colloquial Spanish here in Barranquilla. Like, even though you would say that, it would sound too formal for most, like, for common people in the streets.
Which word?
Like, ¿qué hubo pues?
Okay. Very
We don't
formal?
say. No, it wouldn't be formal. It would be weird. But whatever includes the word hola, it's like, well, this person is trying to approach me, and it immediately changes the way most people would perceive the way you're talking to him. It's like, okay, he's trying to address like informal language, so they would answer and use informal language if you use the word hola, because we never say that. I mean, we say it, but it has to be like a very specific or formal social context where you're greeting someone who's maybe not too close to you.
And what is the most used word to greet people and friends?
It depends. So some are crazy, like cuéntamelo todo. It's like
Okay.
So, sometimes people use the expression entonces qué?
yeah, like I see my friends and they would tell me like cuéntamelo todo. It's not like they're actually telling me like I need to tell them the whole story.
That would be weird in Bogota. If somebody tell us that, cuéntamelo todo, we would say,
Cuéntamelo todo.
He's not from Bogota.
¿En qué andas? ¿Qué más?
Okay.
Like, stuff like that.
Good. So there we have other example of regional varieties, and also varieties according to the context. So Giancarlo told us that if it's a formal situation, they will hear the word hola. But if it's not formal, they will hear the other types of greetings. Good. So for social linguistics, varieties is not only related to demographic, but also to the relationship among people, right? And that exists because we want to belong to a special group of people. So if we want to let the others know that we want to identify as a member of that group of people, could be Antioqueños or could be costeños or could be rolos. So we need to use words to make the others understand that we want to belong to that community, or to not belong, but, or in a way, yes, belong, but also to get closer to them and make the others feel that we are equal. But what happens? That is a construction. If the group doesn't want to accept that, they are going to reject it with other words or other behavior, right? So if I want to construct an identity that says, okay, I'm equal to you, I'm from Bogota, but now I live in Medellin, and now I want to be equal to you, and I start using words, intonation, and other things that help me to get closer to people from that region, but they don't accept that. That group of people can start behaving and saying things to let me know that I am not from that region, but I am from Bogota, that I am different. So identity is constructed socially. Yes, Wilton?
I had a friend, she's from Buffalo, and she came here to Medellin, and she had a very good Spanish. But anyways, every time she said hello to us, was really weird because she said "Kyo parce," but parce with that R, and it it was so weird. And like, no, don't say hello like that. It was weird. So she didn't feel part of the group, but she was trying to become part of the group.
But didn't sound good. So you reacted by telling the person not to say the word.
Yeah.
Now it reminded me that once I met a girl from Spain, and we shared the same school. We were teacher assistants at the same school for 10 months. She was from Spain, so she spoke Spanish. And I always that I met her, I always greeted her like, you, ¿qué más? And once she stopped me and told me, I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean by ¿qué más? ¿Qué más? I don't understand that word. Because she understood the word quemas, de quemar. So she couldn't stand the word again. She told me, okay, tell me, because I don't understand what you're trying to tell me all the time. What do you mean by quemas? That was funny, because I was always that I met her, I always greeted her the same way, but she was not understanding me. She answered, she said hello, but she didn't really get my word. She didn't understand what I was trying to say. Okay, here we have some questions. Arley wrote, what would be like you are not from here? Okay, Giancarlo wrote, ¿qué más llave?
Teacher.
Yes, Rafael.
Sorry if I interrupt you. Well, I would like to ask you something about this that you are talking about. And it is, I was reading something today, the book about standard language and linguistic variety. So I have a question: if it is like the same, or it is not equals?
Yes, it is related because a standard language is, well, it's mentioned in the chapter you are reading this week, and it says that
Yes.
it is mm, it is ruled by something different to linguistics. So it is not that that type of language has a special type of structure or a special pronunciation. That a group of people want to let others think that that is the best way to speak. That there is no rule that tell us that that is the best. So it's like to say some people from different parts in South America say that the Spanish that is spoken in Bogota is a good Spanish. That is something that doesn't have a basis on linguistics. It is not that we speak a different Spanish from the one spoken in other regions in Colombia. That it is because there is a dictionary which has a list of words which that are used in Bogota. So we use the words that we use are in a dictionary and in grammar books. It doesn't mean that the language that is spoken in other regions is not a good language, it's not a good Spanish. But for political reasons and for business reasons and for mostly for business and for political reasons, they have stated that the Spanish spoken in Bogota is the standard, but it's not because the language is different. It's not because there is not a linguistic explanation about that, but a political and a business explanation of saying that a language is a standard or it is not. So what the chapter tells is that varieties of languages are present in one person and in one group of people and in one region and in one country. So varieties are everywhere and anytime. So that there is not a linguistic reason to tell that of a dialect is a dialect or a standard is a standard. That those terms were built because there is a political or a business reason behind it.
Okay. Thank you for
Teacher,
your answer.
Okay.
teacher. But anyways, as I was listening to the radio this morning, I was listening to the W radio with this journalist. What's his name? Julio. Well, his speaking is perfect. I mean, he speaks really, really good. There's no action. There is no intonation that you can tell. Oh, this person is from this place or this other. But I mean, there is no sound in his speaking that can make him be identified in a certain place.
We do have
I
an
dare to say
accent.
you do, yes, but not him because he's a journalist and he speaks
Sure.
wonderfully.
Journalists are taught to, if they are from other regions different from Cundinamarca, they are taught to try to speak as people from this part of the country because they want, or let's say TV and politics and business want to position this type of accent and the way we speak as the standard. But there is not a linguistic reason for for saying that this the Spanish spoken in Bogota is the standard. But that's why in the reading that you are doing this week, you will find out that the standard English is also known as the BBC English. You know, the BBC is the channel of news, and it happens also in other countries. So the people who are in the news are asked to imitate the pronunciation and the different um, characteristics of the spoken language of a certain region of a country. In the case of people in Great Britain, is the people from London. So people that are in the BBC are asked to talk as people from London speak, but then you will find out that in London there are also different varieties because they get people from different countries. So they also have categorized the English spoken there for the varieties. But what the chapter tells is that there is no reason based on the structure of the language is different or something related to linguistics that makes characterize or categorize a language as a standard or as a dialect. But there are political reasons behind it. Right? So,
Sure.
yes.
So,
Rafael?
well, what you mean is that when we are talking with people that we don't know really well, or the acquaintances, do we have to use a standard language?
No.
It is better than using a linguistic variety or something like that, or
No,
doesn't have.
the reason why teachers of English study this topic of social linguistics is to become aware of varieties and the importance of respecting different varieties. So we shouldn't be unpolite because there are different varieties. there are in the same person. We can use different words according to different situations. So we need to respect those varieties. And what we need to show our students is that they might encounter also different words. But usually, if we use a book for teaching our lessons, we are teaching a standard English, the English of the books. But if they face real world, if they go to an English-speaking country, they are going to face varieties, many varieties. So that's what we
Teacher,
need to teach.
Like informal English, something like yes.
Exactly. So
Very informal.
if they are going to face a real speaking situation in a English-speaking country, they will face situations in which they will listen to informal English, English spoken by Black people, by people from China who are living, for example, in USA, or from uh, people from a different um, from a different community, which is not the academic one. So they will listen to different varieties.
teacher,
Sarah?
Noemi,
Noemi.
about what you say before about the BBC News accent. For practicing listening, is a good idea to listen about BBC News or another program.
We should practice listening with not only the news, but with any program or any movie that we want to watch. So because of the reason that we just mentioned, there is a person which is called David Crystal, and more or less like 10 years ago, he wrote a book about the Englishes. And he expresses there that English is a global language, but with a lot of variety. So he states in his book that we should help our students to get closer to those different pronunciations. So let's suppose that a student starts working for a company that asks him or her to communicate with people from India who speak English, but they have a different accent. So at the beginning, they are gonna have some problems to understand, but with more practice, they will get the messages. So English is a global language, but with a lot of varieties. It's something that cannot be changed, cannot be stopped, and we just saw with the exercise of readings that varieties are even in the same person, who depending on the person, on the listener, or on the context, on the place, the situation, is going to use different words for greetings, for example. So the idea is not to say that one variety is better than the other, but they exist, and if we are going to specialize, for example, on making business with Chinese people, so we will practice a lot of listening English spoken by Chinese people. So we will understand them better, right? But we cannot avoid that. We cannot avoid the reality of having varieties.
Teacher,
Yes.
this is Wilton. But I would like to know a little bit about how these varieties in the speakers can make a different writing. For example, if we are writing on WhatsApp or things like that, we have to be aware when we are writing, because many people use those varieties, or is using now those varieties. And for example, like you, or things like different varieties. I don't know if those kinds of varieties, they're going to change in the future, maybe, because um, we now can see that there are many uh, mistakes writing things like WhatsApp or another things like that.
Yes, they change all the
And
time.
maybe could we,
They change all the time. We can see that,
because
for example, some
yes,
people in WhatsApp write you too, yes, to say to mean this, right? Or many others. But this is something that it didn't exist some years ago. So language
mhm.
varieties change all the time. They are not static.
It could be that in maybe in the future we are, or we are going to have many words that we won't use.
Yes,
Could
it
be.
could be that in the future we will have some new words and some words that we won't use anymore. Um, for example, the word caballero some years ago meant a different thing from what it means currently, right? Caballero some years ago was a person who protected the queen and the king and had a special role. Now, caballero, currently nowadays, it means a person who has good manners, a man who has good manners. So, language can change the meaning, the words can change meaning. Some words can be cannot be used anymore, could not be used anymore in the future, and we could have new words also. For example, la Real Academia de la Lengua, they every year they study the words, the new words that are used, and the frequency and the number of people who use them. If they encounter a word that is frequently used for many people, they include it in the dictionary because the
It
dictionary
could
has
be that
the most used words.
in a few years. Ah, okay, teacher. It could be in a few years we can see the word paila in the dictionary, for
Amparse.
example.
Maybe if a
Something
lot
like
Amparse.
of
that
people
can
start
happen.
using it.
Or
So
parse.
chévere was not a word that was considered, let's say, an official word. But so many people use it that now the RAE says that it exists. It's not, it cannot be doubted because a lot of people use it.
I have a question, teacher.
Yes,
If for Spanish, RAE is the academy who studied that. What is the academy that studied English?
I will check it. I don't know.
Okay.
Does anybody know?
No.
I don't know. I have
Teacher,
no
Teacher,
idea.
maybe Oxford University, maybe.
Maybe, or Cambridge University, yes.
Cambridge.
Sebastian says that parse is in the dictionary.
And the word pana.
It's in the dictionary?
Yes, because they some people use it as a reference of friendship, and also is used for a textile issue.
Yeah, but pana comes from partner. It's
Yeah.
the misspelling, no, mispronunciation of partner.
Also you can find in the dictionaries if it's a colloquial word
Yeah.
or if it's a formal word. Also, we can find the varieties in different countries of South America. So how the word, what is the word for one thing in different countries in South America?
Teacher, but I think that language is dynamic, because when we are writing in WhatsApp, some dictionary make some kind of changes, but also we use a colloquial words for saying something, and also when we are making our introduction in some specific context, we use those kind of words.
Exactly. So we vary the vocabulary that we use according to the situations we face.
Yes.
So that's why if you talk to your boss, you don't talk this. If you are not friends with your boss, you are not going to use the same words as when you talk with your best friend, right?
Yes. It's not the same, and also when you are sharing ideas, you use your corporate language to complete or complement the information that you are trying to transmit. But like you said, when you are talking with your boss, you don't use those kind of language. Even in Spanish, you don't say, "Hey boss, I think it would be chévere to work on this thing." No, you said, "Boss, I prefer to use this tool to develop and complement the whole sentence that you are going to say."
Sometimes we are friends with the boss, so we talk with other words that are close, that make us closer to the person. But sometimes we are not friends, so we use different words.
Yes.
This topic is also very related to identities. So, for example, the identity of people who work in the news is as a person who speaks the language that is spoken in Bogota. Yes, so that's what they are trying to show to the people who listens to the news, that they can use the variety that we have in Bogota, but also the variety that is used for the news, because in Bogota we have also different varieties according to different varieties depending on the context and groups of people. So we have a variety if we are in the academic context, a variety if we are in a party, a different variety if we are talking to people that belong to a certain neighborhood, etc.
Yes, teacher, and I consider that sometimes, for example, the reporters have to take into account many aspects, because they have to speak with many kind of people, not only in Bogota or in Cali or in Colombia. Some news are watching in many kinds in many places of the world. So they have to be careful with that.
Exactly. So, because that is a rule that was stated by people from that community of journalists. So, journalists consider that there is a certain variety that needs to be spoken for that specific situation, giving the news, saying the news. So that's why the identity is constructed socially. So a group of people accept that and they start using that type of language. So how can we apply this to our situation in the classroom? I'm going to ask you to answer these questions based on a 7-minute video about a teacher. So here we have who does most of the talking. So you will watch a video of a teacher in a class with 11th graders. Those students are bilingual because their parents are from North America or from other English-speaking countries. And the teacher is North American, but all of them live in Bogota. And the idea is that we are going to explore a little bit the identity of the teacher by analyzing the language that he's using in the classroom. So the questions that you need to answer are, who does most of the talking? What kinds of questions are posed? What kinds of answers are facilitated? How did the teacher talk to his students? What was his tone? Did he use directives, questions, praises, criticism? How do you think his words position his students as readers and writers? How do you think his students position him as a teacher? How did he position himself as a teacher? How might these positionings be shaped by how he was taught? I mean, the teacher, by the kind of school he attended, by his race, class, gender, or sexuality. Here we have others. What were the students doing in the class? Were the students engaged in the lesson? How did the students communicate with each other? How did the students position each other as readers and writers? What are the strengths? What will you do different? How do these practices match up with the kind of teacher you want to become? How do they contradict? Do you understand all the questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The idea is that we find a way to make this topic closer to our reality. So we need to teach English and we need to find out what is our identity, because sometimes we, for example, give the floor to the same student, or we just praise the same students. So we are not giving the same opportunities to all the learners in the classroom, and that is going to affect their learning. So when we study the way we talk in class, we can identify our identity, the power that we have or the power that we give to the students, and how that infers or has an effect on students' learning. So the video that you will watch is this one. This is the link. But please start watching from minute 11 to minute 17. Okay, because the whole video is 30 minutes long. But we are just going to watch 7 minutes. So,
excuse me, teacher, from what to what? Excuse me.
From minute 11 to minute 17.
11, okay.
Okay, please let me know when you are done. The idea is to answer the questions that I'm going again to share with you in the screen.
Okay.
Okay, I would like to start by asking Lina to please tell us what she watched in the video. What were the type of exercises? What did you watch, Lina?
Uh, as long as I can understand, teacher, because it was a little difficult. I see that the teacher asked the students to guess what they think that the words mean. For example, in the list that he did in the board.
Yes, he had a list of words on the board.
Yes, vocabulary. And he asked them what they thought it was.
Okay, what else? What other exercise did he have?
And they do a reading exercise with the story. Listening exercise, listening and reading exercise.
Okay, good. So, who does the most of the talking during the lesson?
The teacher.
The teacher, right? So he's the one who has the power to, or he's the one who speaks most of the time, who has the possibility to practice a lot or talk a lot during the class. Good. Thank you, Lina.
Okay, teacher.
Sharon, what kind of questions are posed and what kind of answers are facilitated?
Okay, I think that the fourth question was the ones to make kind of definition of the words, because the thing that I can notice is that when he asks for a word that he already written in the board, the students just look like, oh my goodness, what is this, or what can I say? They don't understand the whole definition and the context that they can use that word.
Okay, and what are the answers that are facilitated?
The answer? I think maybe can be a kind of exemplification from the teacher to involve the students to use that word and to think in the context they can use it.
Exactly. So the teacher is the one who asks the questions and the one who answers, right?
Who answers. He made the question for himself.
Okay, yes, he asked the question and then he answered the questions because they were mainly about vocabulary.
Yes, I think that those students don't understand the whole definition and the vocabulary that the teacher is exposing, because I think is kind of bored reading all those words in the board and ask, tell me an example of this word, or use it in a sentence, or just said for saying something in past tense, the word he is asking for. So it's kind of boring, and so hard to understand because he is the one who's already talking. And like you said, the students can have the chance to practice the vocabulary and also the speaking skill.
Okay, what was the teacher's tone of voice?
Just a low down tone, because he's talking like this and make some stops and then continue and think and wait. And I think, like we said in Spanish, he's mamando gallo. Yes. I mean, I know it because when he tried to play the sound, and he was just wasting time and searching the icon, and then he plays the tape and wait and turn around and then ask to the students. So that's what I saw.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Let's see other classmates' ideas about the same questions. the teacher's tone of voice? What was his attitude? How was the interaction during the lesson?
It was
Can I teach
terribly.
you?
It wasn't.
I think that the
Giancarlo.
teacher was
Okay, who wants to talk? Sorry.
Me, teacher, me.
Okay.
Denise.
Okay, Flor, go ahead, please.
Well, in that case, I consider that the class was not motivating because the tone of the teacher was terrible. Maybe it was a song to sleep, and I consider that the stage of an engage was absolutely absent because the attitude of the teacher didn't motivate the students to interact with the teacher. Only the teacher spoke, and sometimes one student said 2 or 3 words, no more. Especially one student, the teacher with a white t-shirt. I consider that it was she was not in class. Maybe her mind was in another place. Maybe because she didn't get the topics, or she didn't understand what the teacher said at that moment. I don't know. So I consider that was terrible.
Okay, so you mentioned something that is that the girls didn't participate. The boys tried to, and sometimes they ask questions, but the girls didn't. They didn't say anything, right? Okay, who else? Giancarlo?
Oh yeah, I was basically gonna say the same thing. I mean, the teacher was basically talking to himself. He was trying to make the students to become involved in the topic, but he would like ask the question when he was asking like what does it mean, and he wouldn't even allow the time for students to like research or look into their own previous knowledge. If they had an answer, he was just immediately trying to answer. I think he was aware that he already lost them, so he was trying to go forward with the class, and like in front of their attitudes, they were lost. And a good example is when he asked them about the word "sign up." Do you guys know what "sign up" means? And like students were like thinking, and we could see like a couple of kids trying to negotiate meaning in order to find the answer. He would say, "Oh, it means matricularse, registrarse." So the teacher was already lost in the class, and his tone of voice was definitely not inflecting at all. He's very boring. He sounded like he was like struggling himself being there too. So yeah, I would say that the way it was facilitated, to me, it was terrible. We couldn't see what he did before, but if it was doing the same thing, uh, that could explain the reason why most of the students were like looking at the time for it to be finished.
Okay, thank you, Giancarlo. Arley?
Me teach
Arley and then Noemi.
Noemi.
Okay, Arley?
Or Wilton.
Teacher, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I had a problem with the microphone. Well, I think that basically that teacher was terrible. Why? Because maybe he used like a context in which not all of the students were related to, and also the type of activities they didn't encourage the students, and didn't and those activities didn't engage the students to the class. So basically, the students were not interested, and maybe there were like some girls that maybe could be interested on learning what the teacher, or maybe understanding what the teacher was saying, but they didn't understand anything because of the context. Or maybe I think that they had a problem with the language, and the teacher also mixed like the topic of the class or the vocabulary of the class with some experiences of his life that maybe they were not that related to the topic. And basically, like, the person who was doing everything in the class was the teacher. So I don't think that maybe that class is like a meaningful class or a meaningful experience for a meaningful experience for the students, because basically they were not doing anything. They were just like listening some information that maybe they didn't understand because the teacher was not doing what he had to do.
Okay. Thank you, Lei. Noemi?
Yes. Basically the same. The teacher was speaking all the time, and but the teacher was speaking so fast, and his volume was really low. Most of the students were confused, and for that reason they didn't participate. He doesn't look as a teacher, no, he's just speaking as a normal person without any emphasis in his way of speaking, or even he is not using any kind of body language to help the students. The way the teacher spoke was not clear, but he used a good audio, and he used it was good because was accompanied by the lyrics, by they can read the part of the audio. So just after that, it helps the students to get engaged with the class a little bit.
Okay. And Wilton?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is that the students wasn't engaged with the kind of dynamic that the teacher was trying to implement in that class, because for the faces that I can see, they are all bored and don't know how to stay or how to hand that situation, because they don't understand, they are not engaged, it's boring, the teacher is not dynamic, so they are all sitting and watching and trying to listen and understand. So if I was there, the truth is that I'm going to argue with the teacher because he's so bored. He's so bored. How can you understand, and also how you can learn something that you are not related to? It's so hard.
Okay.
But this is a good exercise for the real life.
What happens, and I tell you, sometimes we want to, we think we give the students the opportunities to speak, and we prepare classes that are interesting, and sometimes we don't identify what is wrong. Something like that happened with that teacher. Okay, Wilton, you wanted to say something?
Well, teacher, my friends already said it, but I think yes, like they said, he was boring because maybe he used a good idea, a good tool, but I think it that happened many times here or in our city. Maybe many institutes have many different teachers from a native language, but they don't know how to teach. I think that is an important point, because when we are going to teach, we have to take in account all things, not only speak or for example, when I was seeing the video, I I could see that the girl was looking at her teacher and blowing her face, and she was doing many things different, like to pay attention to the teacher. And it's that, I think.
Okay, what you all just did is called discourse analysis, is to analyze what the person does and say in order to get to conclusions. What you did was to position the teacher as a person who is boring because speaks all the time and doesn't provide students with exercises for them to talk. And the teacher was trying to position himself as a person who provides students with the opportunities to speak. What happened when you analyze the talking is that the question that the teacher posed were all time about vocabulary that is unknown by the students and that is not contextualized, right? So it was if students, if they were almost, I mean, they had a good English level because either his father or their mother spoke English as a native language. they, in the case of the girls, they didn't want to participate, and in the case of the boys, they participated just by trying to answer the questions that were about vocabulary. So there was no interaction because of the types of questions that were asked, right? In relation to power, so the one who had the power to ask the questions was the teacher, and the one who has the power to choose the topic was the teacher, and the ones who had the opportunity to answer the questions were the students, but if they didn't know, they didn't speak, they didn't say anything. I'm going to read what Sandra just wrote. She wrote, "We can see clearly the little interest of the students due to the way the teacher develops his class personally. I didn't feel connected with the explanation. I think that the resources are not used correctly, and the most important thing is to get the attention and participation of the students, but making them understand what they are being taught, using the correct vocabulary, and what is necessary to make a good class." Okay, so Sandra here mentions that teachers also need some knowledge about how to teach, about didactics, about methodology. We need to develop some teaching skills, like how to have a good rapport with students, a good relationship, to know what they like for different ages, so we can understand how they will learn in a better way. That is something that a native speaker doesn't know just for being native. So, as Wilton mentioned, sometimes in some places, uh, native speakers are hired just because they speak the language, but they don't know they don't have the knowledge about how to teach, and so this happens. The teacher was thinking that he was giving the students the floor, but he didn't have the knowledge on how to do it.
Sure.
So,
That is
Tiffany.
Joanna.
Joanna.
That is right that you say, because, for example, I have the opportunities a couple years ago to study in the Colombo Americano, and I was a teacher and a native teacher. The class was like the video. Obviously, he speak very well, but the class never was prepared. He always give us use photocopies. In that case, was about the passive voice. Is use a photocopies, the same like on a page that I study normally, and no more. He read the page, but he didn't display in the real context. And I think that is a problem when you receive people to speak English and no more. I mean, the same in the school. Maybe, for example, here in my school, there are a teacher that is from Canada, but he even isn't speaking English, he's speaking Spanish. So I think that is much better when a person is prepared for teach and not use speak an a language and no more. I think that is wrong.
Is very important. Okay, going back to the topic of identities, it is important to mention, for example, a difference between a teacher in China and a teacher in Colombia. So students in China think that if they interrupt the teacher is unpolite. So for them, this teacher would be a good teacher. So the identity that different people have is constructed in society. In that society, that is okay. But in our society, a person who teaches a lesson in this way is identified as a bored person or somebody who doesn't motivate students. So that's why it's not only what the person wants others to see about himself or herself, so but also what the society or other people think about those attitudes and those words that are used. I could say that, for example, I am a teacher who respects opinions, that if I analyze my discourse, I would find out that I don't accept others' ideas. Yes, so it is important that we analyze our own language or what we do in the classroom to find out if what we try to communicate and the way we try to interact is actually what we do, as it is in the case of this teacher. The video that you watched was a part of a research that tried to find out why students didn't interact if they had the knowledge of the language.
Teacher, but there can be an issue about the teacher. For instance, when I was a child, in my high school, teachers talk in this way. Only words, the topic wasn't contextualized. And for instance, the teacher, o sea, we can see the teacher is old.
Okay, so but that's why I'm telling you that that is an idea that we have in this society, that if the person is old, the tone of voice is going to be quiet, and the action or the dynamics are not going to be the best. That is what we have in our mind as a person who is old.
Yes, sorry, teacher.
Okay, no, but that can be different, okay, in other places or even with different people who are old.
Yes, but I think the teacher hasn't wanted to actualize himself. Only the old method, the approach. I didn't see one approach.
Okay.
Even not even audiolingual, any approach. So only writing on the board and speak and speak and speak, give meanings, and the students get so bored. Okay. And the students, I think, didn't understand anything, didn't learn anything. I guess.
When these students were asked why they behaved that way, the girls answered that they considered the teacher lesson was boring, while the boys considered that they tried to participate in class. So also what happened with this teacher is that he was a native speaker and not an English teacher. And well, sometimes happens that native speakers finally are also good teachers sometimes. But also, as you mentioned something related to the age, or probably the way that teacher learned when he was a student was in that way. So that could affect or have an effect or an impact on the way he was trying to teach. That is also something that social linguistics study.
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Well, no. Thank you all. This is I'm glad that you participated a lot. We could probably start next encounter discussing something else about this exercise, because it's already 3 and I need to start another encounter. Some of you are also in that encounter. So we need to move to the other course, but we can continue this topic next week, okay?
Okay, teacher. Thank you.
Teacher.
Thank you all.
Thank you, teacher. So clear.
Okay, teacher. Let's see next.
Okay. Okay.
In a few seconds.
Yes.
We are going to change the screen. That's it.
Okay. Bye-bye.